So we can now learn how to do things right. So we can get to feeling better and living better today. In other words, in this part of the journey, we are going to revisit our childhood environments and pick up the pieces of our missing soul. Pieces that we were required to get as a child but perhaps didn't. And put them back inside of us today so we can once and for all fill the hole in our soul and start living and loving in ways that work. Okay, when it comes to abandonment, there are two types. The first kind is called other abandonment. The second is called self-abandonment. Okay, so there's two types of abandonment, other abandonment and self-abandonment. Let's begin with other abandonment by getting everyone on the same page with this statement. When we speak of abandonment of others, we are talking about someone who was in a position of power and authority in our young childhood life, and this person who neglected their responsibilities when we needed them. They could be large, they could be very, very small as well. But whatever the case, we as children felt very neglected. That's the point. That's the bottom line. Okay? For the majority of us, we are speaking about our parents, but this could also be caretakers, aunts, uncles, church leaders, teachers, you name it. It could be anyone that you felt neglected by, who had a responsibility for you. Child psychology research shows that if we experience any type of dysfunctional influence as a child, we will suffer from the abandonment issues as an adult. The relationship between a mother and a child and a father and a child is divine. In other words, there is a certain bond that is to take place in the primary years of life that sets the stage for our interpretation of self. If we do not receive or experience these bonding moments as a child, we will grow up to be adults with a blurred sense of identity, which will lead to abandonment issues. I'm going to repeat that. That's very important for us to understand. If we do not experience the bonding moments, meaning between mother and child and father and child, we will grow up to be adults with a blurred sense of identity, which will lead to abandonment issues. Meaning, if we were raised in environments where we were abused, and it's not only physical, it can be emotional or mental, or even just criticized, or disrespected, or treated like an obligation, or brushed off, or minimized, or neglected. Again, it can be very extreme or very, very small. Or just if our feelings were ignored and not heard, if our words were not heard. This rejection lowers us to disconnection with self. So as a child, if say we were brushed off and we were trying to say something and they weren't listening to us, that's what led us to feel rejected. And that's what leads to disconnection with self. So memo from Normal Land. If our connection to our parents was corrupt in any way, it creates a static or blur that will affect the way we see ourselves. If our connection to our parents was corrupt in any way, it creates, or not even, you could use the word corrupt, or just was not stellar, just not all the way. It creates a static or a blur that will affect the way we see ourselves. So, the job of a parent is to give feedback to their child that offers a sense of self. The job of a parent is to uplift children, to support children, to tell them how proud they are of them. Maybe to criticize, but to show them the right way, the right path. Okay, yes, you did it this way, let's see if we can do it better. But it's always a positive take. The parent's duty and responsibility and obligation is to always make it positive for the child. That's how children learn and grow. But if that wasn't the case, we're going to be left with abandonment and rejection issues. We need the feedback as humans, and especially as children. That gives us our sense of self. So for the record, Tracy says, the job of a parent is to give love freely, unconditionally, no strings attached. That is the job of a parent. And if they didn't, we as children get stuck with the emotional price tag of a hole in our soul, also known as abandonment. It's that simple. If we didn't feel or receive the love that we were meant to receive, somewhere along the way, we're going to feel abandonment. So memo from Normal Land, a child's self-perception is always a reflection as to how that child perceived the way her mother or father perceived them. The child's self-perception is always a reflection as to how the child perceived the way her mother or father perceived them. So it's not our fault if our identity has been blurred since childhood. If the connection with our parents experienced any disconnect, it is impossible to have a clear version of self. In other words, if we never got the mirror or feedback we needed to see ourselves clearly or with value, we will without question suffer from abandonment issues. So we go through our life trying to find validation of self. But here is the problem. We try to find validation of self through our love relationships, through the man, through the other person. We don't know what we don't know, and we will attract into our life those whose energy aligns with our original abandoners, which is who? Our current day narcissists. So if you look very, very closely, you will see that our current day narcissist, or that dynamic, will feel and be very, very similar to our childhood and whoever was there to raise us, either our parents or caretakers or whoever it was. If in childhood we felt very neglected, that's what we're going to feel in current day adult relationship with the narcissist. If in childhood we felt a lot of anger or yelling or like the loud type of abuse, we're gonna feel that in our narcissistic relationship. So we're kind of connecting the dots here a little bit for us. So one day, when our narcissists ignore us or respond to us with blank stares, or treat us like we are a burden, or disrespect us, or brush us off, or yell at us, or eventually abandon us, we are taken right back to our childhood, trying to find or fix that missing piece of initial love we were meant to receive. So how do we begin our healing and filling the hole in our soul? Well, the answer does not lie necessarily in going back to our childhood or going back to our parents or going back to our caretakers or going back to our narcissists. It's all about us. It starts with us. We are the only ones, especially as adults now, that can fill that hole in our soul. And the answer is found in learning how to stop abandoning ourselves. So we're always talking about self-love and self-care, right? And self-healing. But a huge, huge component of that is no more self-abandonment. And we're going to talk about what that is. Which means entering into a season where you learn the internal muscle of self-validation. So a big part of self-love and self-care is stopping the self-abandonment, even though we had other abandonment in childhood and our narcissistic relationship, which is also called self-validation. Does that make sense to everyone? I want everyone to understand that. Yeah, does that make sense?
Can you say that?
Yes. So self-love and self-care, a big component of that is to stop self-abandonment. Even though we felt other abandonment in childhood and in our narcissistic relationship. And this no longer self-abandonment, that's called self-validation. So a huge part of self-love and self-care is self-validation, which we're going to get into right now.
Can you give us an example of self-abandonment?
Yeah, I don't think you did
We will.
find it.
We will. We're going to talk about it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we're going to talk about it. just getting into it right now. She wanted to lay the foundation as to what other abandonment is, which is what we experience in childhood with parents or caretakers, and what we experience with narcissistic relationships. Now we're going to talk about self-abandonment. So how do we begin healing and filling the hole in our soul? Again, the answer is to stop abandoning yourself and learn self-validation. You see, narcissistic love has us trying to find validation of ourself outside of ourself. But when we walk in self-love, we learn how to self-validate. So self-abandonment actually is what we talked about, the disassociation, the disconnect, the triggers. You know, we talked about that whole period of when you get triggered and then you go into confusion and you're in a gray and then you disconnect from self and you make knee-jerk reactions. That's all self-abandonment. Okay? Now we want to talk about
self-validate.
Exactly,
So
self-validation.
it could be just feeling numb. And,
Yes, absolutely.
And
Depressing.
maybe being depressed or
Eating.
not functioning.
Yes, and that's what she meant by
Going cuckoo.
you're in an
Calling,
unclear emotional
Texting
state.
back.
Yeah.
Where are you
and
at? Are
like
you
a
gonna
slow
call me? I know you're not talking to me.
So like self-validate, like for myself, because I'm at this new job,
Phone
my boss
ring.
thinks I'm really stupid all the time, like says, oh, let's see if you could do it right when I get back. You know, like just really rude shit, like over and over again. But I tell myself it's like all that self-talk to keep me there.
Yeah.
Is that self-validate?
We're gonna talk about it, but that's a part of it. That's a part of it, is getting yourself out of that unclear state, emotional state, and coming back to connection with self. So Christina, that's a part of it, but we're gonna get into it now.
Wait, can I ask one question? I'm trying to understand the self-abandonment with, she was saying depression's part of that?
It could be. Remember we went through that whole list earlier of the different examples? We can go through it again at the end if you'd like.
I missed that. You were just saying so much good stuff. I'm trying to
That's
write
okay.
things down.
That's okay. I know this is an amazing class with a ton of info. So we'll repeat that at the end, but we will. I will come back to that just for you. Okay? So let's talk about self-validation. Self-validation means to establish our own value system of self, and it is a layer of choices. Today we will learn our first choice of self-validation, which is learning to own your truth. What is my truth? Learning to own your truth and stand in your truth.
Can you repeat the definition of self-validation?
Yes. Self-validation means to establish our own value system of self. And it is a layer of choices. So
Our own value of system?
our own value system of self.
Value system.
And it is a layer of choices. So today we will learn our first choice and most important choice of self-validation, which is learning to own your truth. So last week or in our previous class, class 2, we talked about when it comes to healing, one of the first steps to healing is about telling the truth, telling your truth. This is how I'm feeling. This is what happened. This is who did it. The truth, the facts of what you are feeling. She says, I'm going to say something and please don't get bothered by this, but we as women, especially those who have survived a narcissist, or those who had a primary person who was to love us, who dropped the ball, have a horrible habit. We are liars. And this includes codependence. We are liars. How, you ask? Well, we lie to the universe, we lie to ourselves, we lie to others, and we become more often than not, when someone violates us, we say it's okay, when it really is not okay. So it's not your real technical lie, but it is in a sense because we are not divulging the truth. We're saying it's okay when inside ourselves we are blood boiling, red hot. This is so not okay, right? Or we're hurt and we're sad and we have tears inside. This is so not okay, but on the outside we say, yeah, it's okay, no problem. Sure. You know? Memo from Normal Land. Abuse, wrong treatment, abandonment, or rejection, or even disrespect or brush off, so it can be small things, right? Not being heard, is never okay. From this day forward, we will raise our base of self-love and walk in self-validation. And stop lying to ourselves, stop lying to others about their actions, and take a stand. So memo from Normal Land. If someone violates you, it is okay for it to not be okay. It is okay for it to not be okay. So we're going to learn this muscle together through a short little exercise and allow others in the room to bear witness to our truth. So I want you to tell yourself the truth about something that was not okay, maybe from this week or just something in your life, something big, something small, whatever you like. And we're gonna go like this. It is not okay that you did not call me back when you said you would. Okay? We're gonna exercise this muscle. So, we're gonna go around the room just really, really fast, really, really quick with this one sentence, ladies, okay? No sharing about life things. Just this one sentence we're gonna start with. It is not okay that you and we're gonna say it out loud real quick because we need others to bear witness and hear these words, because this could be something in the past. Mine was in the past. And I was not able to have that person bear witness to my truth. But saying it here releases it out of our system, gets it out there, and shows our soul and spirit, this is my truth. Okay? And this is a very safe environment, a safe place where we all can accept and hear each other's words. Okay, so Sharon, let's start with you. We're gonna go around the room just really quick because we're gonna be able to do this in life when we're on our own by ourselves, when something has gone awry and something's not okay. All right, Sharon?
It's not okay that you abandon your love for me, your unconditional love for me when I made mistakes.
Awesome, thank you so much for sharing. Sherry?
I'm gonna have to pass because it's gonna take me way too long to think of something.
Okay, if you want, we can come back to you. That's okay.
Maybe,
We'll come back. That's okay, no worries.
It's hard.
too much pressure.
It's hard.
Would you like to go?
It's not okay when you tell me to not be so close-minded.
Awesome, thank you so much for sharing. Wonderful. Laura?
It's not okay that you interjected your fears into my peaceful existence.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Laura. Awesome. Teresa?
It's not okay when you don't invite me to places with the kids.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Christina?
It's not okay for you to reject me when it comes to family and vacation.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Go ahead.
It's not okay when you are too busy and are unavailable.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, thank you for sharing. Awesome. Sherry, do you have something?
I don't have anything right now.
Okay, that's okay. No worries. Well, I'm so proud of all of you for having the strength and courage to share and stand in your truth. There is a purpose to this exercise. And like I said, it's about, first of all, releasing what's inside of us that we have been, realize it or not, ladies, this could have happened months and years ago. We have been holding it inside of us till today, till right now, till we spoke these words. And the second that we said it, we've released that negative energy. And we are gonna feel that much lighter, that much calmer, that much more peaceful. When we hold things inside and don't speak our truth to ourselves, maybe not even to the other person, but to ourselves in a safe environment, that's holding negative energy, and that hurts us. So I'm proud of you all for taking a stand to release it.
I have a question.
Mhm.
It's not okay to start the sentence like that, but shouldn't we have our boundaries and express ourselves to that person?
It depends. It's very, very dependent on the situation, the circumstance, and the person. Sometimes the person can be a very unsafe person, so you want to be very careful with that. If you have a specific example, we can talk about that after class, privately, you and I. But in general, you want to be very careful. The reason why we are doing this here is it's a very safe environment. We're not going up against our abuser. Because sometimes, even though we can stand in our truth and we are learning boundaries with them, we just have to be very careful that what we are doing does not make them cross their bounds with us. Does that make sense?
If they receive it as a narcissistic injury, you might pay a price for that.
Exactly. That's
So
what I
just-
mean to
It's
say.
kind of pointless because they don't really hear it anyway.
Oh.
But,
It's being
But it's-
They're
aware.
just gonna use it as ammunition to punish you.
but Isha, like you said, Aisha, right?
Isha. Mhm.
Isha,
Isha,
okay.
yeah.
It's good, like, so even if she doesn't say it to him, it's good, even you just say it to a friend, or you write, or you just say it to yourself, so because you're being
Yes.
true then to
Mhm.
yourself and
Yes.
releasing it.
Yes. Yes.
So you could just act like you're having a conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
And we've talked about before in previous classes, I've mentioned writing. There is something magical and healing about writing, especially for us empaths. We can speak it, but when we write it, our brains and our souls and spirits and hearts just really take it in and understand and see what is happening and what's going on. So this doesn't even have to be about telling a friend. It could be if you have a very safe friend that is open to, you know, sharing and hearing, that's okay. But if we don't have that, or if we're not comfortable with that, saying it to ourselves, writing it down, and maybe even just saying it in our prayer and meditation time. You know, we need to acknowledge what's going on. We need to stand in our truth. That's self-validation. That's self-acceptance. That's becoming aware and observing our feelings. And part of it is our negative feelings in addition to our positive feelings. I hope that answers your question. Yeah? Okay, good.
Yeah.
So self-validation is all about learning to feel and acknowledge our feelings. Because as children, what happened? Our feelings were not acknowledged, right? That's why we felt the abandonment and rejection. Now, with the narcissist, we're still not being acknowledged. We thought in our heads, in our Disneyland, you know, romance story, that we were gonna meet this amazing husband and they were going to acknowledge everything about us just as we would with them. However, that has not happened. Why? Because we had these root issues that we had not healed, and none of us knew about them, so that's okay. Don't beat yourself up. We did not know. That's why we're here today. But what is the answer? The answer is to acknowledge them within ourselves, to feel them and acknowledge them and release them. And this exercise is all about the releasing part. I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
And
Just
self,
basic acknowledge and release that, and then that's it.
and well, and you know, it's not like a puzzle, but it's about whatever is going to make your spirit feel acknowledged, feel heard, feel validated, feel accepted. Yes, I felt like crap when that happened, but I observed it, I know it, I accept it, and I still love myself, because that doesn't define me. That isn't who I am. I know who I am.